It's hard to fathom that once glamorous stars, who were once symbols of wealth and influence, ended up on the streets, sometimes even begging for their survival. These icons once stood at the peak of fame, basking in the glow of spotlights and the admiration of millions. But as the fame waned, all that remained was a harsh reality of bitterness and loss. What led them to this downfall, from lavish mansions to unforgiving homelessness? The stories of these 8 former stars will shock you and reveal the true cost of fame. Let's dive in and discover their journeys. The spotlight doesn't always last forever. Beneath the facade of success and adoration, some stars harbor unexpected tale stories that take them from the pinnacle of fame to wandering aimlessly on the streets. Let's uncover the dark and shocking realities behind the names of these once untouchable stars to understand how quickly a star can fade into obscurity. Let me start by sharing the heartbreaking story of Margot Kidder, the Iron Lady of Hollywood, whose life took a tragic turn. Margot Kidder, best known for her iconic role as Lois Lane in the Superman series, was once hailed as one of Hollywood's brightest feminist icons. Her portrayal of Lois Lane, a strong, independent woman who didn't need anyone to define her, earned her the admiration of millions worldwide. With her talent and resilience, Margot reached a level of fame and power many actresses dream of. But when the spotlight faded, so did Margot's fortune, as a series of personal tragedies pushed her into a dark period, robbing her health, career, and ultimately her home. Far from the resilient character she once portrayed, Margot was deeply affected by a serious car accident that left her unable to work, stripping her of her main source of income. From being one of Hollywood's most sought-after actresses, Margot slowly faded into obscurity in a harsh industry, where fame can be as fleeting as it is dazzling. With her savings gone, Margot found herself sinking deeper into poverty. The confident, radiant image she once projected on screen became nothing more than a distant memory. Now, facing financial ruin, Margot was forced to confront the grim reality of a life she never could have imagined. Unable to pay rent, and without the fame to fall back on, Margot resorted to survival methods that would have been unthinkable for the woman who once lived in luxury. The first nights spent sleeping on the streets were a devastating shock. The woman who once strutted down the red carpet now found herself huddling on cold, noisy street corners, enduring the loneliness and humiliation of a life she never expected. Margot's meals were sparse and inadequate, a far cry from the lavish feasts of her former life. The Lois Lane who once captivated audiences now had an unkempt appearance, her clothes torn and her hair messy, an image far removed from the glamorous star she once was. For Margot, homelessness wasn't just about the cold nights, it was the crushing sense of betrayal from the very industry that once elevated her to fame. Her physical health suffered, but it was the emotional toll that proved the hardest to bear. The pain of abandonment by society and the humiliation of being unrecognized by anyone on the street was something Margot couldn't overcome. Once adored as Lois Lane, she was now just another nameless homeless woman, forgotten by the very world that had once celebrated her. Eventually, Margot found some relief when she received support from a charitable organization and was given temporary housing. But the scars from her journey were deep and permanent. The shadow of depression clung to her, haunting her every step, from her days at the height of fame to her final, painful decline. Every day felt like an invisible battle, filled with the weight of past memories and present pain. In 2018, Margot, worn out and broken, chose to end her life, leaving behind a tragic end for a woman who had once stood at the pinnacle of success. Margot Kidder, the woman who once walked proudly alongside Superman, ended her life in obscurity and despair. Her story, though deeply sad, is far from unique. Many stars have risen to fame only to fall into tragic fates. Stay with me as we explore the story of another Hollywood star, who, like Margot, once shone brightly only to find herself lost in the abyss. Corey Haim, from shining glory to lonely poverty. Can you even begin to fathom it? A former Hollywood sensation, once adored as a youth icon with a glowing future and a promising career, ultimately spent his final years in despair, loneliness, and poverty. Corey Haim, a name synonymous with the golden age of 80s teen films, was once the shining star that millions of teenage hearts adored. He stood at the pinnacle of fame, adored by fans around the world. Yet, a silent tragedy crept in and stole it all away, leaving him homeless and living a life far removed from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. From his first appearance on the silver screen, Corey Haim quickly rose to prominence, becoming the heartthrob of many young girls through iconic roles in films like Lucas and The Lost Boys. With his innocent eyes, charming smile, and effortless acting talent, he was dubbed Hollywood's Golden Boy. Fan mail flooded in daily, and crowds of female fans would gather outside his home, hoping for a glimpse of the rising star. Corey seemed to have it all: adoration, fame, and a career that was poised to soar to even greater heights. It was as if nothing could halt his meteoric rise. But in the dazzling world of Hollywood, fame is a double-edged sword. The pressure to constantly maintain a perfect image, combined with the relentless public scrutiny, soon became an overwhelming burden on Corey's young shoulders. The studio offered him immense salaries, and he lived a life of indulgence, spending lavishly on luxury goods and pleasures. But soon, the allure of excess led him down a darker path. Addiction took hold, and his once promising career began to unravel. Scandals piled up, and the major roles he once enjoyed were replaced with insignificant parts, if any at all. Instead of thriving, Corey became trapped in a destructive cycle, ignoring the pleas of loved ones and sinking deeper into a world of darkness and addiction. The final years of Corey Haim's life were a heartbreaking testament to his fall from grace. The Hollywood star, who had once basked in the glow of fame, was now a shadow of his former self. No longer the star of the screen, no longer signing major contracts, and the money that once flowed freely had all but dried up. Corey found himself living in a cramped, makeshift apartment, struggling to make ends meet an existence that stood in stark contrast to the lavish life he had once known. On several occasions, people spotted him wandering the streets, gaunt and weary, his eyes vacant and his clothes tattered. He was a man who had once stood at the peak of his career, but now he was a mere echo of the boy who had enchanted millions. The contrast between the life of fame and the reality of poverty was almost too painful to comprehend. Corey Haim had once had everything: celebrity, wealth, the adoration of millions, but in the end, he had nothing. The glamorous parties he had once attended were now distant memories. What remained were long, empty days filled with solitude, battling inner demons, and drowning in the weight of depression. His loneliness ate away at him, and by 2010, at the age of just 38, Corey passed away from pneumonia. His tragic death marked the end of a short, turbulent life. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of his story was that his family, struggling with their own financial troubles, couldn't even afford a proper funeral. In an act of desperation, they reached out to his fans for donations, hoping to give him a simple farewell. Corey Haim, once a shining star in the Hollywood firmament, was laid to rest in obscurity and poverty. His life stands as a harsh reminder of the price of fame, a price that can elevate someone to unimaginable heights, but just as easily drag them down without mercy. And if you think Corey Haim's story is tragic enough, brace yourself for the next tale: a pop star who captivated the youth of the 70s, but was ultimately consumed by the very fame and temptation that once made him a household name. 3. Leif Garrett: from adored pop star to poverty and loneliness. Can you imagine that a pop star who once captivated millions would one day end up living in poverty, loneliness, and isolation? Leif Garrett, a prominent name in the 70s pop scene, with his charming smile, long hair, and magnetic charisma, was a phenomenon among young fans. But as time passed, his life slid into the abyss when the fame faded. Leif was once the embodiment of a generation, an idol to countless young girls, and a regular feature in music magazines. At the peak of his career, the name Leif Garrett was synonymous with hit songs and the image of a young man with the cool factor that defined the 70s. But behind the glossy exterior was a young man vulnerable to the pressures of fame, unable to resist the allure of unhealthy pleasures. Surrounded by the glitz of Hollywood, Leif quickly fell into a destructive cycle of partying. Drugs slowly crept into his life, pulling him further away from his music, his fans, and the clean lifestyle he had once embraced. Instead of focusing on his career, he got caught up in a dangerous lifestyle of substance abuse. His career, which had once soared to incredible heights, began to stall. But for Leif, this was only the beginning of a series of dark days. Once celebrated for his music, he soon found himself making headlines for his arrests, drug addiction, and legal troubles. The fortune he had amassed was quickly drained on meaningless indulgences and opiates. In his later years, Leif Garrett's image was a far cry from the pop star he once was. He ended up crashing at friends' homes, unable to afford a place of his own. The teenage heartthrob, who had once been adored by millions of girls, was now just a haggard man, living in poverty and solitude. His once famous name was now unrecognizable. Leaf, the icon of a generation, was swallowed up by the same Hollywood that had made him famous. Leif Garrett's story is a harsh reminder of the fleeting nature of fame. The unforgiving world of stardom didn't just consume him, it also took down a beautiful model, once adored by the public. Her fall from grace is a bitter lesson about the true cost of fame. Lonnie Willison, from glamorous beauty to tragic street life. Lonnie Willison, a name once synonymous with stunning beauty, charm, and a life of luxury, has now become a haunting memory. Once a shining star in the modeling industry, gracing the covers of prestigious magazines and captivating crowds at major events, Lonnie's life was the epitome of glamour. She was not only a successful model but also the wife of Jeremy Jackson, the popular Baywatch star whose fame skyrocketed during the show's peak. However, the fairy tale that seemed to promise forever ended in tragedy, as Lonnie lost everything and slipped into a life of homelessness, wandering the forgotten streets of Los Angeles. Lonnie's life was once a parade of admiration and luxury. With her striking beauty, she was the perfect image of grace and elegance, always confident on the catwalk and red carpet. Her marriage to Jeremy Jackson was the envy of many, but behind the public's gaze, the couple faced struggles that only they truly understood. After many unresolved conflicts and the pressures of a crumbling marriage, Lonnie and Jeremy divorced, marking the beginning of a painful journey. This event set off a chain of tragedies that would slowly unravel everything she once had. The end of her marriage didn't just take away her partner, it plunged Lonnie into a severe mental health crisis. Without the support she once had, and no longer the glowing days of modeling, Lonnie fell into deep depression. The loss, the pain, and the emotional toll left her struggling to find herself again. As the spotlight faded, so did everything she had built. Her wealth disappeared, her beautiful home was lost, and her reputation was reduced to a distant echo. With nowhere to turn, Lonnie found herself living a life she could never have imagined. Once the face of high-end fashion, she now wandered the streets with a haggard face and a tired, broken spirit, pushing a shopping cart filled with her few belongings. The woman who once graced magazine covers was now searching through trash bins for food, sometimes sleeping under bridges or in dark alleyways. It was almost unthinkable that the radiant beauty people once admired would be reduced to this painful reality. The streets of Los Angeles became her new home, each day a battle for survival. Those who recognized her saw a far cry from the vibrant model. They remembered a shadow of her former self. The bright days of photo shoots and glamorous events had faded, replaced by the harsh, unforgiving reality of homelessness. The joy that once sparkled in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a profound sadness. Each step she took seemed to lead her further away from the life she had known. As her former friends and family drifted away, Lonnie sank deeper into despair. Occasionally, passers-by would stop and pity the woman they barely recognized, unaware that she was once a celebrated beauty icon. Lonnie's story serves as a stark reminder that nothing is permanent. Beauty, fame, and wealth can vanish in an instant. But Lonnie's story is just one of many tragic tales. In another part of the city, an action star, now living in his own personal hell, struggles to survive, bearing the scars of a life marred by fame, addiction, and prison. 5. Wesley Snipes, the once invincible action star, now in prison and burdened with debt. Who could have predicted that Hollywood's invincible hero, the symbol of strength and courage in the Blade series, would one day face events that would completely destroy his career and life? Wesley Snipes, the action star who ruled the screen in the 90s with his talent, fame, and immense fortune, was once an unstoppable force in Hollywood. But beneath the glitz and glamour, he made a series of decisions that led to his downfall, decisions he could never have imagined would have such devastating consequences. At the peak of his career, Wesley Snipes had the dream life that most could only envy. Hit movies like Blade and Passenger 57 turned him into a household name. With his chiseled looks, commanding presence, and impressive range, Wesley quickly became one of Hollywood's most bankable action stars. His success was unprecedented. Films, endorsement deals, and a lucrative property empire followed, making him incredibly wealthy. For a while, it seemed like Wesley was untouchable. But despite his fame and fortune, a dark cloud was beginning to gather. Wesley became convinced that his wealth and status could protect him from the consequences of his actions. In what would become his greatest mistake, Wesley neglected his taxes for several years, believing that his celebrity status could keep him above the law. Unfortunately, he was wrong. When the IRS uncovered that he had evaded millions of dollars in taxes, Wesley's world began to unravel. His once promising career took a devastating turn. He went from being a beloved action hero to a man facing serious criminal charges. The image of Wesley Snipes standing in court, no longer the powerful hero from the Blade films, but a man brought low by his own actions, was shocking to both fans and Hollywood insiders alike. The 3-year prison sentence handed to Wesley in 2008 sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. No one could believe that a star with so much success could fall so far. During his time behind bars, Wesley's fortune dwindled. His reputation, once sterling, was tarnished beyond repair, and the connections he'd built over the years faded. When he was finally released, Wesley found himself with nothing: no wealth, no career, and no public image. Returning to a Hollywood that had moved on without him, Wesley struggled to find his footing. Major roles were no longer offered to him, and the doors of Hollywood, which once seemed wide open, now appeared firmly shut. The once iconic action star was reduced to a shadow of his former self. The films that had made him famous, like Blade, now stood as reminders of what he had lost. The story of Wesley Snipes is one of lost potential and the destructive power of fame. It's a cautionary tale about how quickly a meteoric rise can turn into a painful fall. Fans may have forgotten the action hero they once adored, leaving Wesley to live with the regret of his lost glory. But the story doesn't end here. There are more stars who have faced similar challenges and pitfalls. Let's continue to follow these incredible tales of fame, fortune, and fall from grace. Erin Moran, from the bright, happy days to the dark days of her last days. When you think of Erin Moran, the first image that comes to mind is likely her innocent and endearing portrayal of Joni Cunningham in the iconic TV show Happy Days. In the 70s, Erin captured hearts with her bright smile, youthful charm, and infectious energy, becoming a symbol of Hollywood's golden era. As Joni, she embodied innocence and joy, creating a character beloved by millions. She was the picture of a rising star, a promising young talent with a future full of possibilities. But when the applause faded and the spotlight dimmed, Erin's life began to take a tragic turn no one could have predicted. After Happy Days ended, Erin found herself cast aside by Hollywood. Acting opportunities became increasingly scarce, and the roles that once came easily to her now seemed out of reach. For someone who had been at the height of fame, being forgotten by Hollywood was a devastating blow. Erin was forced to accept smaller, less significant roles, but they were not enough to sustain her. The once promising career that had filled her with so much hope now seemed like a distant memory, and Erin's life slowly began to spiral into a dark place. Financial hardship soon followed. Erin could no longer afford to keep her small home, a place that had once symbolized her success. Eventually, she was forced to give it up, and with nowhere to go, Erin ended up living in temporary shelters. The vibrant young woman who had once been the face of Happy Days was now a weary, broken figure, wandering the streets with a sense of hopelessness. Her steps, once full of confidence and promise, were now slow and uncertain. No one recognized Erin anymore. The glowing star that had once graced TV screens was now just another nameless face, lost among the crowd. Her life had become a quiet struggle, with each day spent battling to meet even the most basic needs. On cold, lonely nights, Erin was left to confront her own memories of better times, the joyful, carefree days that seemed so far removed from her current reality. Once a source of happiness for others, Erin was now trapped in her own pain, with no one to help her. In 2017, Erin passed away in poverty, forgotten and alone. Her death marked the end of a life that had once been filled with fame and glory, but ultimately fell victim to the harsh realities of time and Hollywood's fleeting nature. Erin's journey from beloved child star to tragic figure is a poignant reminder of the price of fame and the cruelty of Hollywood's ever-changing landscape. Though Erin's story is heartbreaking, it is far from unique. Many child stars face similar struggles, hidden beneath the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Let's continue to explore the tragic lives of other stars who once shone brightly, but were consumed by financial and personal battles. Gary Coleman, from famous child star to painful real-life tragedy. Gary Coleman, one of the brightest child stars of the 80s, became an unforgettable icon with his innocent eyes and trademark smile. His portrayal of Arnold Jackson on Diff'rent Strokes made him a household name, and millions of fans adored him. At the height of his fame, Gary wasn't just a star, he was a symbol of youthful charm, embodying the spirit of the 80s. He became one of the wealthiest child stars of his generation, his future seemingly set with a fortune that many could only dream of. But what seemed like a fairy tale life began to unravel in ways no one could have imagined. Behind the fame and fortune, however, Gary's life was marked by hardship. From a young age, he struggled with serious health issues, including kidney failure, which led to multiple surgeries. Despite his physical and emotional pain, Gary maintained his public image, appearing upbeat for his fans, knowing how much joy he brought to others. However, as his fame began to fade, Gary faced an even darker reality. His wealth and assets were mismanaged by those closest to him. His parents were accused of embezzling his money, leaving him with little control over his finances. The very people who should have protected him were the ones who betrayed him the most. This betrayal led to a series of grueling legal battles as Gary fought to regain control of his hard-earned fortune. What was supposed to be a simple fight for justice turned into a long and draining struggle that took a severe toll on his health and finances. Each court appearance, each battle to recover his money, added to Gary's pain, and he soon found himself alone, betrayed, and financially exhausted. As his health deteriorated further, Gary had no choice but to leave the entertainment industry behind. The child star, who once had it all, now faced a future of uncertainty, with few opportunities left. By the time Gary Coleman passed away in 2010, he had lost nearly everything: his career, his fortune, and his health. He left behind a small inheritance, a tragic end to a life that had once been filled with such promise. Gary's story is a sobering reminder that fame and fortune do not guarantee happiness, and the price of stardom can sometimes lead to devastating personal loss. His life serves as a cautionary tale about the harsh realities of Hollywood and the toll it can take on its stars. Gary's journey is shocking, but it's just one of many in Hollywood. If you were surprised by his story, wait until you hear the next one: a beloved comedian whose rise to fame ended in addiction and poverty. Stay tuned for more. Brett Butler journey from comedy queen to street poverty. Brett Butler, the comedy sensation who once dominated American television, is a name that many will always associate with Grace Under Fire. Brett turned the show into a 90s hit, infusing her unique humor and relatable stories into the hearts of millions. With her charm and natural acting talent, she quickly became one of Hollywood's most beloved and sought-after stars. At the height of her career, directors clamored for Brett, seeing her as the perfect blend of talent and authenticity. But when the spotlight faded, Brett's life took a dark turn, leading her down a path of destruction rather than continued success. The pressures of fame, work, and life pushed Brett into a downward spiral of alcohol and drugs. The long shooting hours, combined with the stress of maintaining her role, led her to seek solace in addictive substances. Alcohol and drugs became her constant companions, but also the catalysts for her undoing. Initially, she believed these were just temporary coping mechanisms, but over time, addiction began to erode every part of her life, from her career to her relationships. As Brett's dependence on substances grew, her professional life began to crumble. She arrived late to set, exhibited erratic behavior, and clashed with those around her. Slowly, she lost the trust of directors, producers, and even her friends in the industry. When Grace Under Fire ended, so did Brett's career. She went from being a beloved comedy star to a Hollywood outcast, and as her addiction worsened, she found herself unable to make a living. Without any income, Brett was forced to face a harsh reality: she had nowhere to turn and nothing left to hold on to. The home that was once filled with laughter and joy was gone, and she was left to navigate a life of homelessness and humiliation. The image of Brett, once at the top of her career, now wandering the streets, living day to day on the kindness of strangers, is a heartbreaking testament to her fall from grace. Without a home, Brett struggled to survive, becoming a far cry from the comedy star who once made millions laugh. Her days spent aimlessly wandering from street to street became an endless nightmare. Her life, once filled with promise, was now just a series of hopeless, solitary days. Just when it seemed like all was lost, some of Brett's old friends stepped in to help. They organized fundraising campaigns to give her a temporary place to live. Thanks to their generosity, Brett no longer had to sleep on the streets, but her former glory could never be restored. Once a famous comedy star, she was now a shadow of her former self, burdened with regret and the pain of her lost fame. Brett Butler's story is a tragic reminder of the harsh toll that addiction and a lack of control can take. She was a woman with immense talent, who once captivated audiences, only to be ultimately consumed by the very fame that made her a star. The lives of these stars serve as a stark reminder that fame and fortune can vanish in an instant, leaving behind emptiness, tragedy, and even heartbreak. Once at the height of their careers, they lost their way, facing unimaginable hardships they likely never anticipated. From these stories, what do you believe is the key factor that allows a star to maintain their shine forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. All information presented in this video is gathered from reliable sources and is for reference purposes only. Be sure to like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on our upcoming exciting content.